So Iain, I just want to welcome you very much to this session this afternoon, and thanks again for coming in to join me. So over to you.
Thank you, Hilary. Thank you very much. Let me shuffle over to the microphone. And good afternoon, everybody. It's good to be here. I had some wonderful feedback from the last session we did on, what was that, time management?
Time management.
A few months ago. And so I'm really pleased to be here again and sharing with you some ideas about influencing behaviour. So let's... why is my clicker working? There we go. Who am I? My name is Iain Smith from the cunningly named Iain Smith Coaching. I'm a teacher, I'm a coach and a trainer, and today we're looking at influencing behaviour. And that, of course, begs the question, well, whose behaviour are we talking about? Normally it's about the student's behaviour. That's what we think about, don't we, when we say, you know, behaviour management. And you'll hear phrases about you or your colleagues when we're talking about people who can really control the class, or people who can't control the class. Well, actually, none of that's true, because we're talking about our own behaviour. It's a myth that any of us can control the children that we're in charge of. The students do what they want to do. We are just hopefully influencing them. We're persuading them. We're negotiating with them so that we get the best behaviour from them to help their learning. So with that myth out of the way, what is the secret then? What is the secret to getting great behaviour from these young people? And the secret, of course, is that there is no magic bullet. There is no silver bullet. There's no one thing that will work 100% of the time. So what we're going to do is we're going to be looking for those 1%ers that create the best possible scenario for us to get the best behaviour out of our students. This webinar is for all of you, whether you're newly qualified and starting your first year, or whether you've been around for years and years, long in the tooth, experienced, whether you're spending most of your time in the classroom, or whether you're doing more management these days, whether it's full-time for you or part-time. This should be useful for all of you. So you'll probably recognize this city. It's Istanbul. It's one of the most beautiful cities in the world, and I was lucky enough to spend a year teaching there in the early 90s at the start of my teaching career. I taught at this school here, the Kadıköy Anadolu Lisesi, which I'm reliably informed I mispronounce every single time. And it was a great school, and it was quite a prestigious school. I don't know how I snuck in the back door, that's another story. But what happened for me was that I was under-equipped. I didn't have the right tools that I needed in order to influence my classes to behave as I wanted them to behave. There were 10 classes I had, 36 students in each. And so what I did was I do what a lot of us do. We find something that works. We find one tool that works. And I refer to that concept as your hammer. So you will all have something that works really well most of the time. Like a hammer can be used for most things at home, can't it? There are better tools. There are specific tools you can use, but the hammer will get the job done most of the time. So what was my hammer that I used? Well, I'm still quite ashamed to say it was this. I raised my voice and it seemed to have an effect, and then I raised it even louder, and then of course I was shouting, and it worked for about a minute, and then of course it stopped working. And if you rely on one tool for far too long, then of course this is a truism, isn't it? When the only tool in your toolkit is a hammer, then every problem looks like a nail. So what we need to do is to get as many different tools for as many different occasions as we can. And that's what I'm hoping we'll do today. Lots of 1%ers. And of course it means if you don't like the idea that we're on, don't worry, because there's another idea coming across in just a couple of minutes. But here's a little task I want you to do for me first of all. Okay, so whether you're sitting at home, whether you're standing in the office, whether there's 1 or 5 of you in the room, what I want you to do now, on the count of 3, is to simply fold your arms. 1, 2, 3, fold your arms. Hilary, you do the same?
I've folded my arms.
Very good, very good. Well done, everyone. I'm sure you've done that with no problems at all. Now what I want you to do, on the count of 3, is to fold your arms the other way. 1, 2, 3, fold your arms the other way. Now I know, I can guarantee that some of you are finding that a little more tricky, and it's taking you a little bit longer to do the second fold. And in fact, I bet there's a couple of you who are still trying to do it right now, because that's what happens. It's the same for everyone. It's difficult, and you're doing something that you don't normally do. Right, so why am I talking about this? What's the point of this little exercise? Well, there are a few learning points from it. One is that it shows us that we're all creatures of habit. We do the same thing time and time again. We just get used to doing it in a certain way. You'll notice that I didn't actually tell you to put your right arm over your left arm, or whatever way round you did it. You just went ahead and did it. Now, again, so that's because we're creatures of habit. We do what we always do. So what else is there we can learn from this little exercise? So you will have found yourself doing it a little bit more slowly. And that's because although it's a simple thing I'm asking you to do, and let's be honest here, it is a simple thing, you are so used to doing it the other way that you find it a little more tricky to do it that way. So even though it's a simple thing, it's not necessarily easy. And it takes you longer. So it's not easy, it takes you longer. And the final point I want to make on this one is that even when you actually probably got there in the end, and you were folding your arms the other way, it wasn't very comfortable, was it? You weren't able to sort of sit there relaxed in the way that you would normally fold your arms. And so if I said to you that this is the new way of folding your arms, you might not stick with it. You might not keep trying that way because it takes too long, it's a bit too tricky, and you know what? It doesn't feel right. Well, okay, there are some ideas that I'm going to share with you today that might take you a little bit longer to think about, that might not be as simple to implement as they should be. And do you know what? Even when you're using them, they might not feel right the first time, at least. So that's what I want you to remember when I'm sharing something with you and you're thinking, nah, I'm not doing that, Ian. That's not going to work. I want you to think back to the folded arms thing, okay? Right. Now, onto the first tool. Well, it links to that arms folding thing. You're doing something new for the first time. And when you get your students in, it's great to be doing this, by the way, at the beginning of the term, because a lot of these tools are about setting the scene, or it's much harder in January to go back and try and retrieve the situation. And so this is nice to bear in mind that for a lot of your students, they'll be doing something new all the time. And even though it's easy for you because you've done it 100 times and you're an expert in it, for them, they're going to be taking longer over it. It's going to feel funny, and it's not so simple doing something new for the first time. So basically I'm asking you to be more empathetic and to remind yourself that patience is required, especially when you're getting people on board, because that's what we want. You all know this chap, although I probably need to change the picture on this one now because he's going a bit grayer, isn't he? It's probably a younger picture of him. It's Professor Brian Cox, the scientist and a maker of extraordinary programs that I, and I know lots of other people as well, sit and watch transfixed. And I watch this guy, and to be honest with you, I don't really understand everything he's saying, but they're usually about big gas balls that are 3 billion years old, and we're all going to die in the end of it. That's generally what I tend to learn from these things. But while I'm watching the guy talking and teaching me, I'm transfixed because he is sharing it with such awe, such awe, a childlike wonder. He's really passionate about his subject, and that's what gets you to come along with him. Are you sharing your passion with your students? Are you still, delivering your subject with your real awe that you first found with it? Or because if you're not even taking yourself along, you're not going to take anyone of your students along with you if you can't even inspire yourself. So check in with yourself and think, am I being passionate about this? And if not, you know what to do. Okay. Cover all bases. This is the genius picture of a cab there. It's an acronym, CAB. This is it can be a simple sentence at the beginning of a term, and what we're doing is we're just including everybody. That's what we're trying to do. So I don't know, Hilary, when I introduced everybody to this seminar, I said, right, who it's going to be for. Can you remember who it was for?
Yeah, it's everybody, whether you work full-time or part-time or whether you just started teaching or
Yeah,
whether you're an experienced teacher and that sort of thing, wasn't it?
yeah, that's it, exactly. And I did that for two reasons. One, because it's true, okay, these are strategies that can help all of you, but also because it's a great example of this. And what I'm doing there is covering all bases. I'm inviting you all in and ensuring that none of you are left behind. And that's what we can do for our students, because we don't know their, especially at the beginning of a term, we don't know where they've come from or what they've got. And, you know, they're not empty vessels, but we don't necessarily know what they've got. So when we're inviting them into our subjects, into our lessons, let's ensure that we can do this in a way that invites them all in. So I used to teach secondary, so I'm just going to use an example from when I had a group of year 7s and I got this all wrong. And I said, right, our topic is the Titanic, okay? And they all went, oh, we did that in primary school, and you know, they all knew all about it. Now, if I'd have had a bit more wit about me, I could have said something that covered all bases and said, now we're going to do the Titanic, and there's 3 different sections. So some of you will have done this before. That's brilliant news, because you can really help bring the lessons to life. Others of you won't necessarily know as much as those guys, but you'll have an understanding of the Titanic, a little bit of knowledge. That's great. We're really going to expand on that. Some of you don't even know that the Titanic is a boat. That's brilliant news, because you're in for a whole bundle of excitement and surprise. And that would be a way of covering all bases. Okay, another way of getting everybody on board, because that's what we're doing at the moment, getting everyone on board, is to ask universal questions. So these are questions that generate a positive answer from everybody, and an answer that you actually want. So it might sound a bit funny, but if you can just ask a simple question that goes something like, you're guaranteed a yes. So it can be, I want everybody to raise your hand if anyone here has ever watched a TV program. Now, of course, you're guaranteed that everyone has watched a TV program, some TV program ever. And that's just a little example of one universal question. But where could we go with that? I remember I had a group of disaffected year 10 students who we were going to be writing, and they weren't writers. They weren't writers of fiction. That's what they thought in their heads, that they weren't. So a universal question I asked was, who here has got a name? Put your hand up if you've actually got a name. And of course they all had to put their hands up. And then I said, and who here has also got a pen? And they all put their hands up because they all had a pen. Even if they haven't got a pen, I can give them a pen. Then they can answer yes to that question. And then I got them to write their names. And then at that point, they couldn't deny that they'd written something. And so it's a subtle way of gently easing them in to actually having to agree with you. Might sound silly, but it's fun and it gets agreement. It creates rapport, which is why I asked them to put their hands up as well. It's just physical, subtle gestures that get people doing the same thing. Another useful analogy that I've always enjoyed is remembering to be like a lighthouse. And this is when you're addressing a class and you want to share yourself with them on an equal basis. But of course, you've always got 1 or 2 really quiet people who'll sit at the back and just try and stay quiet as they can while the day disappears. And whereas there's others people who are at the front, loud and in your face and wanting more than their fair share of you. Okay, imagine a lighthouse, and that sweeping light that goes across the skies, that covers every inch of ground with the same amount of light, regardless. So if you can, as you're looking at your class, try and remember to be like a lighthouse. Obviously don't do a sweeping wave, because that'll be a bit weird, but do try and share yourself out in the different ways as you're including everyone. So that's eye contact for everybody. Right, now what I want you to do very quickly is to simply close your eyes, and what I want you to do is don't think of a purple elephant. Now, of course, that's not fair because I kept flashing the purple elephant up, but the point there is that I said don't think of a purple elephant. And of course, our brains do a funny thing. We have to process the positive to actually think of the negative. So you had to think of a purple elephant in order to then not think of one. So you're focusing on the purple elephant even though you don't want to. Now okay, so let me click on here. Don't use don't is the tool as much as possible. If I say, you know this thing about wet paint, don't you? Don't touch. Who can resist? Who can resist? So there's a slightly differently worded don't touch. Okay, so how do we use this in the classroom? How does that work? Well, when you're talking to your students, you'll hear yourself saying these things. Don't talk, don't play with your phone, don't text, whatever it is. And it's like you'll have seen a parent, a worried parent in the playground. Their little darling 3-year-old is running, hurtling across the playground, and you can hear them shouting out, "Don't fall over, don't fall over." And of course, what happens? Child falls over. Now, 3-year-olds are clumsy, aren't they? Yeah, so they might have been falling over anyway. But what they've done is put that idea into their head because the mind doesn't hear the word don't, or it disregards it. So what you actually hear, or what your students will hear when you say these things, is this. Talk, play with your phone, text, swear, be late, call out, argue, lie, distract other people. That's what they hear. We don't really want them to do that. You're embedding commands for them to do, and it's exactly the opposite of what you want them to do. So on my training courses I usually do this exercise, which is don't into do. And so we sit down and we take a big list of these, and then we try and come up with positive statements that we can use instead. And I won't get you to do that now, but perhaps as homework you might like to have a little go at this. Think of phrases that you use using don't, and then try and create alternative statements. It's surprisingly difficult. And that gets us back to habits, doesn't it? Because we habitually use the phrases that fall off our, trip off our tongues the easiest. So that tool there is simply to use a positive whenever possible. Ask what you do want rather than for what you don't want. You know this guy, Hilary?
I do.
You do? Well done.
Yes. Because
who is it?
It's Yoda. I'm quite a fan.
Are you?
Yeah.
Didn't know. Fantastic. Okay, well you'll know that Yoda is a wise old sage. You know, he's the master Jedi. And for those of you who maybe don't know the Star Wars story, first of all, who are you? What have you been doing? But secondly, Luke Skywalker is trying to, he's really attempting really hard to do this task that Yoda set him. And he says, I tried, I was really trying. And Yoda, of course, says, there is only do or do not. There is no try. Okay? And what I want you to do is to learn from Yoda and use this tool. Avoid using that word, try. What it does, and there is a caveat to this, but what it does, it legitimizes students not actually doing the thing you're asking them to do.
So you're saying that they go, well, I tried.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And the caveat for this, of course, is that there will be some students who it is appropriate to use it for. If you just simply want them to try something that they would never have normally attempted, of course, you'll know your students. You know what's best for them. But for a lot of students, they can get into that habit of they're just being a bit lazy. Okay? And trying legitimizes them not actually trying. Another one to avoid is the word if, and what I'm talking about here as well is this. This is the confrontational if. This is when there's a little bit of low-level disruption or things are about to kick off, and what you're trying to do is to prevent the situation escalating any further. So you'll say, if you do that, then this will happen. And of course, that's a logical thing to do. You were probably told it yourself, which is that's probably your blueprint for using it. But what you're doing is you're legitimizing, again, their options. And you're outlining an option. So if you do this, then this will happen. That doesn't say don't do it. This actually says there are those options. Think about it. Now, of course, we're dealing with teenagers as well.
Yeah.
So many teenagers will see that as the gauntlet being thrown down. They'll see it as an opportunity. The consequences aren't always at the forefront of a teenager's mind. The situation where they may be feeling embarrassed or a little bit resentful in a difficult situation, they've got nowhere to back down. If you do this, then that is a phrase to avoid. The double bind. Now this does actually come on from offering a couple of options. The double bind is a great tool, and all teachers everywhere use it automatically. It's a funny thing. that most people know exactly what I'm on about with this. This is where you offer two solutions, two scenarios, two alternatives where you don't mind what they do. And we do it, I used to do it with my little kids when they were little girls, and I'd want them to eat some vegetables. So I'd give them the option of, right, today, what do you want? Is it sweet corn or is it peas? And I didn't mind at all what they had, as long as they had the veggies. And it's a really useful tool. And I think one thing that's great is just by knowing that it's called the double bind, that it allows you to sort of consciously choose to use it and also teach other colleagues the thing itself. So next one is WWIIFM. Now, do you know what this is?
What's in it for me?
What's in it for me? It's great. It's the radio station that you're the only station they're listening to. What's in it for me? Okay, we often give our students things to do. So you know, and the reason why we're doing that is because it's on the curriculum, because it's in the lesson plan. Now, is that a good enough reason to do it? Well, sadly, often not. So how can we get the students to really want to do the thing off their own accord, off their own bat? We can sell them the benefits. Now, what I mean by this is we've got to give them a reason why they should want to do it, not just for the joy of learning. Let me share a story with you about my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law, Phil. Great guy, and he used to sell BMWs for a living, and he taught me the difference between features and benefits.
Oh yeah.
And so what he was saying was that, okay, so someone walked into his sales room and they would say he would learn from them that they are interested in safety, that you know, you can learn these things very quickly. And so knowing that information, he would then tell them about the car, not by selling the features, but by selling the benefits. And so the car that they were looking at, he could have told them that this car goes from 0 to 60 in 7.4 seconds. That's fantastic, but that's just a feature. What we'd be looking for is, the way he would sell it, is to say, well, what this car can do, because it's got such a high acceleration, it can shoot off the slipway and onto the motorway with real precision and oomph, so that you can safely get onto the freeway and off you go. Well, that's a real benefit. So what's the benefit for the students then? Well, I shared this with staff at a college just a little while ago, and one of the guys came up to me and said, this is great, I can really see myself using this. And he was teaching practical skills, and he was saying that he was teaching plastering, and so what he was saying was that the kids would sometimes then start, you know, throwing the plaster around and messing about, and he was trying to get them back on board. And how he envisaged using that was to actually say, right, if you learn this skill here, you will be able to plaster a wall much more quickly. You'll be able to do 2 walls in a day instead of just the 1. And do you know what that means? You'll get paid more. And he knew exactly what it was. So he talked about the trainers that the kids he knew were talking about. They all wanted these new trainers. And he said, if I tell them that by learning this skill about applying, holding the handle in this way and applying the plaster in that way, if you do that, that's a shortcut to your trainers. Now that is a great example of selling the benefits rather than just the features. Gives them a reason. Yes sets. This is a great tool. This is straight out the halls of Westminster, the corridors of power. And again, it's just another little verbal phrase that you'll probably have to think about the first time you use it, but you can learn to use it so that it flows. In fact, my wife is a primary school teacher, infant school teacher, and we were talking about this thing, and she said, right, I'm going to go and use that. And so these were only little kids we're talking about, little 5-year-olds or whatever. And but she used it with them, and she came back so happy. She said, what I did was at the end of the assembly, I wanted them all to go back, and normally they walk back and they're chatting and they're shuffling about. And so what I did was I used the yes set, and it's give them 2 facts that they can't deny, and then the 3rd fact is something that you want them to do. So what she did was she said, you guys, she probably didn't say you guys, but she said, you've all been sitting so wonderfully, well behaved, and you sang so beautifully. 2 facts. What I want you to do now is to walk calmly and quietly back to your classroom. And because they'd agreed with the first 2, you're psychologically primed to agree with the next one, which is what you want them to do. So it's a yes set. And the way you can finish a yes set off as well with a little yes tag or a question tag. And these are really useful, aren't they?
Yes.
And they're really useful, yeah, really easy to actually put in, aren't they?
Yes, they really are.
And it's something we should all be using, isn't it?
Yes.
So of course you've seen what they are. They're just little statements, little questions at the end of your statement. So it's something that you can just add on really easy, isn't it? And of course it's, you know, it's a closed question. Normally, because I do a lot of coaching, and so normally we're asking for open questions, but here we want to close the question down to a yes or a no. And of course I'm pushing them towards a yes, aren't I? While we're doing yes tags, we can do what this little fella does a lot as well. Most of you will recognize him, you know, from the old version or the rebooted one, and that of course is to use your head. And so while we're talking, you can't see me now, but while we're talking and getting people to agree, we start nodding. And that is, again, it's a rapport method. What people like to do what you're doing, and so they'll maybe nod or they'll recognize you're nodding. I mentioned Darren Brown in the blurb for this. He uses this all the time. I've seen him a number of times on the stage and read a lot of his stuff. And the poor guy has been, you know, nodding with people, getting them, you know, getting them coerced along with what he wants them to do. And he's been doing it for so long, he's actually got an involuntary tick where he just nods every. I'm doing it now. You can't see me, but Hilary's laughing at me. And so he's got this involuntary tick that he can't seem to stop doing. But that's because, so don't go that far with it, but do use it when you're trying to get people to agree with you. Okay, embedded commands. Now that's what we were talking about earlier, wasn't it? You know, when I said to you, don't think of a pink elephant, yeah? Now, of course, that was an embedded command to make you think of a pink elephant. And some of you might still be thinking, oh, I didn't think of a pink elephant. Well, you definitely didn't think of a duck-billed platypus. So, you know, it does make you think in a different way. If I'd have wanted, but you're thinking of one now, aren't you, because I mentioned it. Okay, so we can direct people into what they're thinking, and we can do this in different ways. Embedded commands, let's have a little look. Hi, John. Gosh, you look pale. Do you feel ill? Do you need to sit down? You won't throw up now, will you? Now, those statements don't look anything in particular, but what we can do is we can start to influence people's feelings or understandings by emphasizing certain words and certain phrases. So if we did that in a certain way, we could actually be telling them, because the commands in there are look pale, feel ill, sit down, throw up, which you might not have noticed that, or, you know, and I'm using this as an extreme example, of course, you know, it's not something you're going to use in the classroom, but I'm using that to show you that you can put in silent, secret commands. It's hypnotic stuff, really. And so, you know, if you're feeling comfortable trying to coerce the students into doing what you want them to do, fine, have a play around with that, and notice if there's any difference. You might have to emphasize certain words differently, which you will do anyway. You'll notice yourself doing it now that I've mentioned it, but check out what you're doing when you why and when you choose to focus on certain words when you're asking everyone to do something. Again, these are very similar hypnotic style phrases. Let me bring that up on my little pad. So we've got, one of the things you'll really love on this course is, then you talk about whatever you want to talk about, but you've already implanted the idea that they're going to love it. So as you consider how to do your best work today, you've already suggested there that their best work, whatever comes afterwards, they're already thinking that this might be my best work. And you might like to think about how much attention to detail you'll be paying. It's just an aside, but you've suggested that idea without bringing attention to it, so it's just in there already. I was talking to that George Clooney yesterday, he's such a name dropper. Great joke like that. The most precious 2 words in the English language, Hilary, do you know what they are?
It's not Hilary Nunns,
Oh,
is it?
you know, of course they are. To you, that is, of course. Well,
Yeah.
from my perspective, the most precious 2 words are, of course, Iain Smith. And to you, listening, you know what those 2 words are as well. They're the 2 words that make up your name. Your name is such an important thing to you that when someone uses it, you listen, and you listen with more intent than you would normally do. So use the students' names as much as possible. And of course, if you've done supply work, you'll know what a loss you are when you don't know the names. So let's have a look at putting these together. So as you digest these language patterns, Hilary, you can look forward to feeling eager and enthusiastic about taking questions on this training webinar, couldn't you? Nodding away. And if you do it for 20 years, well, you'll probably end up with the tick that I told you, or being an expert in it. Just to recap then, whose behaviour are we talking about here? We've not really touched on the student's behaviour at all. This is all about how we manage ourselves and therefore influence our students' behaviour. We're not just relying on one hammer, we're taking all these different ideas, and of course you will know when it's best to use them, on which student, at what time. There's always going to be a judgment call on how you use it and when. But if you've got a well-resourced toolkit, you're giving yourself more options, and that's what we want to do. Always have more options. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, well, there's time for some questions now, everyone. So if you've got something you would like to ask Iain or me, then type it up into the question area. You should have that on your, on your panel, there should be a question area there. And what I'll do is I'll have a click now. In fact, I'm just having a look here. Here's one.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
it's actually about embedding names. So I guess that's a problem that most people have at the beginning of the year, especially if it's a brand new class.
Yes.
Or if it's if you are a supply teacher or an agency member of staff or whatever it is. What is your top tip for remembering people's names?
Yeah, of course, because you've got so many at the beginning as well, and you're trying to learn them all at the same time. Okay, there are a few different strategies you can use. So the first one, as soon as you learn someone's name, is to use it again. And so, Hilary, if this was the first time I'd met you, what I'd try and do is use your name, Hilary, as many times, even, Hilary, if it feels a bit odd, Hilary. But what I'm doing is using it to remind myself, and so I'm making an association between my mouth and you. If that doesn't sound right at all, did it? Okay.
But I know what you're saying, because our politicians do it as well. When they reply to a question, they use your name in it.
They do, and it speaks directly to you, so you get that link. There's another great one as well, another great idea. I've got a friend called Mike, and I remembered Mike's name when I first met him very simply by using this technique. And Mike's got curly black hair. And so I looked at him, and he looked to me just like a microphone. He's tall, he's thin, and a shock of black hair on top. So he looks like a mic.
Excellent.
Right.
So he looks like a microphone. So you're saying that that's what you connected it with.
Yeah, that's it. And so you look at him, he looks like a microphone. And now I've remembered his name. Okay.
So if you got somebody, that was quite an easy one, wasn't it?
Yes, that's true.
Because if you're called Stephanie, or should we say Carol?
Yeah.
They're unusual names.
No, but I mean, that's dead easy as well. What you can do, what I would do anyway, is I think of Carol, so I think of Christmas. So my friend Carol, I would imagine her, I don't know, carol singing. I'd imagine her wrapped up in a big scarf and, you know, the light and going out carol singing. That's how I'd remember her. And you can build on that as well, because if you meet other carols in your life, what you do is they are in a group carol singing.
Okay.
Or you've got, you know, another friend called Mike. He's using the other mic to sing into his head. He's using his head to sing into, you know, and the sillier, the better. So there are a few good examples for learning names. Don't tell people what you're imagining them as.
I remember a class when, I don't know, there are certain phases in life where you have the same name. But it's obviously a popular name at a certain time. You know, it might be that you've got a room full of Abbeys or a room full of Andreas because they are the name of the season kind of thing. So it's learning to connect all of those, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we've got a couple more questions here. Could you give us a couple more examples of yes tags?
Yes, they're very simple. They're just one word, two word tags at the end. So, isn't it? Aren't they? Couldn't you? They're all examples of question tags. So that, it's just a short phrase at the end of a sentence.
Yeah.
Don't you?
And then nod at the same time.
Nodding is going to always emphasise that yes that you want.
Yeah, and I've even seen when I've been to conferences and training and people are trying to engage you that way, they might say, is everyone okay with that, and put their hand up, nod their head.
Yes. Yeah.
And aren't you?
Yeah, that's it.
You're having a great time now, aren't you? Nod your head, put your hand up. The person puts their hand up, so they're very much influencing you,
yes,
verbally and non-verbally, aren't they? They're getting you to put your hand up.
They're telling you how to think, they're telling you how to feel, and when that's for your benefit, that's a great thing.
Absolutely.
Isn't it?
Isn't it? Stop it. Okay, so Tony has said that he knows a few Richards, which is interesting. So how would you...
well, something springs to mind, okay, but that's entirely up to you. But what you could do is imagine him as Richard the Lionheart or Richard III.
Yeah. Okay,
so whatever comes up first when you're thinking about that is you imagine him with a hunchback and a crown, and he's Richard III. Is that the right one? Is that Richard III with a hunchback?
I believe so. The one they found in Leicester car park or something.
Yes, yeah. So you can just see him dressed up as that, and you can imagine them all dressed up in that finery, or dancing around in a medieval court.
Okay.
Because then you've got a linkage. It's just a simple way of doing that.
There was something you mentioned.
Or Rich, if you know him just as Rich, maybe you see him with banknotes like just flowing out of all of his pockets because he's rich.
Yeah. Going back to the don't into do.
Yes.
Don't into do. What would you suggest as when you mentioned don't talk, so what would your do be?
These are very difficult, actually. They're much more difficult than you'd expect. So what are we asking? Don't talk. So don't talk while I'm speaking, or something like that. Yeah. So what do you actually want them to be doing?
Mm-hmm.
And so what is it you want them to be doing? You might want them to be being quiet when I'm speaking.
Okay.
So that's...
Or listen.
Yes, so that's it. That's a positive, direct command. That's a request that you want them to do. It's funny how often we ask them to do what we don't want them to do, or avoid doing what we don't want them to do. So try and find a way of saying what you actually do want them to do.
Yeah.
Don't play with your phone. That could be, well, actually, can you put your phone away, please? Or can you turn your phone off, please?
More direct instruction. They're more likely to get it right if they know exactly what you're wanting from them.
It's funny when I'm coaching, I'll often ask people what they want. We're talking about goals, and it's what do you want? And they're very quick to give me a list of what they don't want.
Which is such as?
Well, if we're talking about a career,
okay.
It's, well, I don't want to be driving to work, or I don't want to be commuting hours. Okay, that's great, that's helpful, but what do you actually want?
Yeah. Like having a proper target.
Yeah.
So we've got another question. How do you share yourself as evenly as possible?
Yeah. Well, this is a conscious decision that you make at the start of a lesson. So I used to try and remember to, I used to have this 5-second thing in my head where I'd look at someone while I'm talking to them for 5 seconds, and then consciously move to the other side of the room, and then go to the back, and then to the front, and then to look over there, and then check in with myself as well. Have I looked at everyone? Have I shared myself evenly? So it is just consciously doing it at the beginning, and then while you're getting into that position, that it will become a habit for you. Because habits are just, repeated actions.
It can be quite exhausting if you've got 30 students, can't it?
Yes, but if you don't do it, you're leaving someone out.
That's right, and also you're building that rapport with them, as you said. So if someone feels, if they are left out and that you're happy to leave them out, they're not causing you any behaviour problems as such, but being left out is a problem. So you do have to try and make sure that you split yourself as well as you can. Another one here. Most of what you've talked about relies on pupils hopefully complying and engaging. Absolutely. And what would you recommend for a group of children who do not buy into these strategies? Let's face it, we all know who they are.
Yeah.
So I mean, from my perspective, there are an awful lot of strategies, and most of it is about the choices part of it, because the defiant student, in my experience, will be one who will defy you as in authority, not because they can't do something or won't do something, but because they actually can't do it, and they'd rather be kicked out of class rather than let their peers know.
Yeah, of course.
So sometimes it's, from my perspective, it's finding out whether the defiance is a won't do it or can't do it. The second thing is, if you say, look, I'll write the first couple of words, if they won't start work, I'll be back in a couple of minutes to see how far you've got. So you get them started and then come back and see how far they've got. So that'd be like, I'm not going to let you not do this. You've got a couple of minutes to start and I'll be back with you.
Yeah.
And if I've got to move a student from one, because they can't sit in that group any longer, I will say, you need to move, or I need to move you. You can either sit there or you can sit there. But if you were to just say, move over there, and they say no, well, where do you go with that? That's a complete brick wall then. I won't go, you can't make me go. And you've just now become conflicted with your student.
It's you against them now, isn't it?
It is, situation. Yeah, and that's a battle that you just don't need. I think that giving the choices, getting them to, like you've described, acknowledging, getting them to agree with you on certain points.
I mean, again, it's a lot of these are slow burners.
Yeah.
So you might still have resistance. You might still have defiance.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Of course, I'm not saying, these are, I said at the beginning, there is no magic silver bullet.
Yeah.
But what we do have is, I mean, you might not even see it, but you might have got compliance. It's just that you won't see it today. You might get it further down the route. But what you're doing with these different things is you are giving yourself as many opportunities as possible to positively influence and cajole and, encourage that compliant behaviour.
Yeah, and not get your emotional buttons out.
Yeah, well, that's a whole different presentation.
I know. Oh, look, that's the end of the time, everyone. If you've still got questions that we haven't answered, and I can see a couple of ones on there, I will email back to you, but we need to wrap this up before we get booted off. So just to confirm that we've been recording this webinar, so I will make a recording available to you if you want to watch it back later or you want to share it with colleagues. Just a quick reminder, we've got some more conversations coming up soon. Sarah Townsend is going to be coming in, and she's going to talk about deaf with a capital D and deaf with a small d, and if you're wondering what that's all about, then she will be able to tell you, and there's some strategies for people who are partially deaf or completely deaf, and whether they get signers or not, and there's some things that you ought to know. And I'm going to do a little one for positive support for ADHD a bit later. Now I'll get those dates to you as soon as possible, and then you can sign up. Coming up also, we've got someone's going to come in and talk about perfect maths. Now that might sound really, really dreadfully boring, but in terms of it being how to positively engage within perfect maths, and an effective questioning session also. So it brings in a bit of behaviour management, classroom management, but also ways to engage your students. And so that's kind of what we're always looking for. Thank you so much, Iain, for coming in again today. And hope to see you again very soon. If you've got any questions, please do get in touch. This is Iain's email address here, my email address, which I'm sure you've got because you'll have heard from me by now. Hope you enjoy the rest of the afternoon and look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.